And he's handed me the discs. These were 3.5-inch floppies. There's probably 20 of them. And he said, hey, if you can get this to work, I'll pay you $20,000. And, here I am, 19 years old. I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. So
that's $1,000 a disc.
Yeah, exactly.
What's going on, Sarasota? My name is Brad Hannon.
Trey Martell.
Felipe Colon.
We've got an awesome guest with us today. We got Jesse Biter. Welcome to the Sarasota SpeaX Podcast. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for having me out today.
Yeah, man, I'm excited for this one. You might not know it, but I came all the way back from a little vacation a day early so I could be here for this podcast. So,
wow.
I'm stoked.
Big hitter.
It was actually a great vacation, but I was just ready to get back to it. So This is also one of those things. But man, you got a crazy story. I really don't even know where to start. So I think we start not at the beginning of your lifespan, but maybe your business career.
Sure.
So HomeNet Automotive, right, was kind of the first venture you undertook as an entrepreneur, correct?
That was it. Yeah. Well, I've always been an entrepreneur. I've had that entrepreneurial heart. I love my parents. I was raised a great family, but they were, middle class. They gave me everything I needed, nothing I wanted. And so if I wanted something, I had to go out and get it myself. My mom's famous for those words, save your money, save your money. And so I did odds and ends, not only around our house, but the neighbors' homes, the neighbors' yards. I started mowing lawns when I was old enough to push a lawnmower. Always just, anything to make a buck. And
traditional entrepreneurial journey, huh?
That's it. I just felt like if someone's willing to pay me to do something, I'm going to figure it out. And so in the automotive space, I started working at a car dealership after high school, after the school days and on the weekends. And they had a computer system there that was antiquated and, green screen type stuff. And I was able to hack into it and build workarounds and allow it to be more efficient. And at that time, the dealership was getting bought, and those people went to different dealerships, and they started calling me and saying, hey, can you come over here and do this and do that? And sure, you're going to pay me? I'm going to jump in my truck and drive over there and do it. And when I was 19, one of the dealers came to me and said he had bought these kiosks that were basically had 3 dealerships on one lot. He had 400 cars. So he bought these kiosks where you could search the cars in inventory, and it would tell you what you had, and you could go out, print out a couple sheets, and then the salesperson would take you out. But the kiosk didn't communicate the inventory with his accounting system, and the company went bankrupt. So he'd gotten the code, and he's handed me the discs. These were 3.5-inch floppies. There's probably 20 of them. And he said, hey, if you can get this to work, I'll pay you $20,000. And, here I am, 19 years old. I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. So
that's $1,000 a disc.
Yeah, exactly.
People today probably don't even know what discs are, right?
Yeah.
The kid's going, this floppy, what's that?
Yeah, my kids look at me like, what do you mean floppy disk? Like,
the funny thing is they weren't really floppy, though.
No, those were the hard ones.
That's it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, the early ones were. That's even before your time.
Yeah, even the early, the 5.25 inch.
Now we're showing our age over here.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. But, for a 19-year-old kid in 1995, it was quite a compelling offer. So I bought a book, How to Learn Visual Basic in 24 Hours, and I went through the book and built a calculator and said, okay, I think I've got that down, and put the discs in and loaded up the program and eventually got it to work. And about 4 days later, I went back to him with the solution and put it in, and it worked. And he gave me some great business advice. He goes, look, I've got a list of all the customers that can't use this. They spend $150,000 on these kiosks, and they're dead weight. He goes, go there, charge them $5,000, and then charge them $250 a month to maintain it. I was like, well, that's great. And he gave me a list of like 10 or 12 dealerships, and I went out to them. They all paid me the money. I got it going for them, and they were paying me monthly, and I was making improvements to the program and everything else. And that same dealer called me, and he said, hey, I just signed up with Auto by Tel. It's an online car selling service. This was before Auto Trader or anything.
Right.
And he says, but I have to type in all my cars manually, and it's a disaster. Can you figure out a way to get my inventory up there? Exactly. And that sounds easy now, but back then there was really archaic user interface. They didn't even allow pictures. He had to fax his cars in or manually type them in. Those were the two ways. So I was able to create a hack to auto upload the vehicles, and And after all the same car dealers signed up for that system as well. And Auto by Tel found out about it. And they're like, you have to come out to California. I was like, great, they're going to shut me down. I went out there and they're like, this is great. We don't know how you're doing it, but we have so many pissed off car dealers. Can you solve it for them as well? And I said, sure, give me your list. And they gave me 500 car dealers that I'm like, and it's, me. I'm like, all right, I'm going to need some help. And so ended up hiring some people, and that was kind of what started it off.
So this is your early 20s, or how old were you?
I was, 20.
We got all kinds of questions.
I remember Auto by Tel because, my dad and my uncle were in that business briefly, way back when. So, but that's going way back.
Way back, mid-90s. Once we actually got to a point where we had to start selling, we had to tell dealers what the internet was, convince them that it was a thing, it was going to stay, and that they should pay money to be on it. So, that was the hardest thing in the mid to late 90s, was convincing car dealers that the internet was real.
So HomeNet Auto was the first one, right? And basically you just went through what that business was. It doesn't sound like it was one thing. It was helping them upload the cars to the internet, right?
That was initially, and then we just got into full vehicle marketing. So, you have originally it was just data, but then it got into how do we clean up the data, because all that stuff was keyed in manually. So Chevrolet could be spelled 100 different ways. So how do we make that they're spelled right every time? And then, if someone's looking for a red car, you want maroon to show up. So you had to figure that out. Then you had to type in descriptions. Then pictures. In the early 2000s, people realized pictures would be great. So we had to figure out how to, allow dealers to take pictures.
Did it function similar to Auto Trader does now, or like?
So we put the data on Auto Trader.
Okay, got it.
So Auto Trader would go out and market to the masses and say, come here to shop for cars, but they needed to get that data, and it needed to be accurate. So in the early days, people find a car online and they'd go buy it and it sold 3 weeks ago. And a dealer would have a new car that came in that they wanted online, and it would take them 2 weeks to get it up there. So it was very slow, where with my solution, it was happening in real time. A car came in, as soon as it got in the system, it was up online. And as soon as it sold, it was removed from all the sites.
And along the way, I think you mentioned this in one of the articles that was written about you. You found ways to add value to the customers by having add-on services.
Absolutely.
And incrementally making what you could do for them better.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to, you said, he taught me a valuable business lesson. You're that first dealer who did the deal with you.
Yep.
And can you want to elaborate on what that is? Was that the fact that he told you to take the upfront money and the recurring revenue?
It was lower the entry barrier and then create a monthly fee. And so that changed my whole perspective on doing business. It was, how do I not just win the sale, but get paid on a monthly basis? And that's what we did. And so my sales team, it was me, and then it was me and one other person. And when I sold the company, I had about 25 salespeople, and that was the whole, just get them sold, and then at that point, once they're paying something, the software itself would upsell them, because it'd be like, oh, this is grayed out, this is grayed out, this is grayed out. You want these things, you just click to add them on.
So how long did you own the company?
I started that officially incorporated in 96, and I sold it to Auto Trader. We closed December of 2010.
2010, so 14 years.
14 years.
Now, what's it like to, everybody has a business and they think it's worth something intrinsically, like my company's worth X. But oftentimes when you go to sell the company, they do their due diligence and they say, hey, it's not worth what we thought it was. What was it like preparing your company to be sold?
Well, so that's the funny thing. I had no intentions of selling my company. It was me. It was a very emotional experience. I've since, built and sold other companies, and that to me was very transactional. This was a very emotional experience because it was my baby, so to speak. And so when they came to me in 2007, they wanted to buy me, and they proposed a number. I said, I don't know, I have no interest in selling, but I'll look at anything. And they proposed a number, and I felt that that number was way too low. And what happened is I basically said, okay, this is how much I'm making every year. If I were to put this money in a safe investment at 4%, I would be making less. So I have to be able to at least make this much. And they're like, you're crazy. And again, this is 2007, housing markets, starting to go down. Yeah, this is really before tech valuations were what they are today. Right. And so 2008, they came back with another offer. It was what I was originally asking, but now the company had grown. So I was like, well, you missed us. And now this is the new number. And 2009,
yesterday's number is not today's number.
Exactly. 2009, they came back with 08's number. I was like, no, now the number is this. And then in 2010, another bidder came in, and again, I'm not for sale. I hadn't hired anyone to sell the company. It was just somebody
the prettiest
would
girl
ask.
at the prom.
I would send them like last month's or last year's QuickBooks file. Like, here you go. And it was a company called Dealer Track, which Auto Trader ended up acquiring after the fact, but they were a public company at the time out of New York, I believe, and they also realized that, hey, this company owns all of our data. If they shut us off, we're screwed. So they started bidding. And I told Auto Trader, I have a higher bid from someone who, just doesn't even know what they're bidding on. And so all of a sudden it became this like unsolicited bidding war. And by the middle of the summer of 2010, I was like, well, I'd be an idiot not to sell. So we agreed probably in August of 2010, and then it took 4 or 5 months to get everything wrapped up.
Who did you sell to?
It was Auto Trader.
Auto Trader, okay.
Yeah, yep. So closed that December 2010, and I remember I was worried about the incoming administration and wanting to make sure we closed before the end of the year for tax purposes, and that ended up being a good thing. So we got that deal done, and that was it.
Do you care to share the multiple? Because nowadays tech company multiples are insane, but I'm curious what it was.
Well,
then.
so that word wasn't even used.
Really?
Then. Yeah, it wasn't. It ended up being probably a 3 times multiple of revenue. But
can you imagine selling a company and not thinking through that?
Yeah, it was, and that's it. And it was also, I'm a naive kid, in his early 30s that is never bought or sold a business and never even thought to seek advice, was just kind of out, just building a business one customer at a time. No investors, no debt. Just you sell something, you have an extra dollar, you go hire someone, and you reinvest that back into the company. So it was very much a lemonade stand. Just very very simple.
Would you give anybody that advice now, though? Like, now that you've been through it, would you?
I left a lot of money on the table. I found out later. Okay. So yeah, I would recommend hiring somebody.
So what'd you sell it for, and what do you think you could have got if when you look back and play this through in your head and you're having a few beers and you're like, man, I probably.
Well, I won't disclose what I sold it for or what I think I can got, but I will tell you, I know for a fact, having spoken and actually seen the internal presentation, that I left about $40 million on the table. So it's a little disappointing, but you know what? All things happen for a reason, and I don't have any regrets. When I sold it, other than the emotional ties to the business, it was the right move. In fact, that was reassured to me a few years later when I tried to hire one of my top guys from the company to come work for me in a new startup. He's like, honestly, these guys are taking such good care of us. We have great health care. They give us great bonuses. It was awesome. Not going to happen. So they loved the corporate America life.
There's something warm in my heart, though, about your answer, because I expected you to say, oh, yeah, no, we did put this XYZ in place, and I wanted to cap out the most possible. But
that's today's speak.
Yeah. You said the exact opposite. You're like, oh, man, it's an emotional battle. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think we started this podcast for a couple of reasons, but one of the things that we didn't see coming is all the great value that we get from our guests firsthand. And Trey and I talk about our businesses a lot, and I started this business with the intention to sell. He took over kind of a family business, and so his sale would be probably much more emotional. My sale is like, here's what the industry, average is. Here's what I'm looking for. Like, this is, from day one I started it, but, I definitely went through a phase where I was running a business, had no idea what it was worth. I was just purely an income generating business, and it was a recurring revenue model. So that was fortunate, but couldn't have ever sold it. Right. And then I had friends selling their agencies for, ridiculous multiples. I'm thinking they're not even doing anything much different than I am. So everyone starts their businesses for different reasons, and, learn some valuable lessons along the way. I'm curious to know now where you're at. Like, that was, and I feel like it's kind of the same reason why I'm building this to sell, right? Mm-hmm. Because I believe I'm not building it to sell so I can retire at 35, 36 years old. I'm building it to sell because I believe that's the launch pad to bigger and better things, or
absolutely
more fun, or more lessons along the way, or whatever that might be. So taking that money and kind of reinvesting it into the Sarasota community like you've done, speak to that a little bit, because that excites me. That's where I want to go. This is the community.
That's why we're here,
part of.
Right? We're here because, Jesse has done one thing that a lot of folks don't do is, you've had your success and somebody who's a young technology-focused entrepreneur comes to a place like this before people were doing it? You know, back in, 2010 you moved here?
I moved here in 2000.
2000, wow.
Yeah, I commuted for 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was kind of before, I wouldn't say it's before Sarasota was discovered, but it's before Sarasota was discovered by a lot of folks who have a profile similar to yours.
For sure.
Yeah, when I was shopping for somewhere warm and tax-free, I drove both coasts of Florida and the coast of Texas. And, you know, back then it was trying to figure out where I wanted to be using AOL. And it honestly, Sarasota wasn't even on my spreadsheet. I had all these stops down the East Coast, and you get there, and you're like, well, I can't afford to live on the water, and I don't want to live in a trailer park, and I don't want to live with the mosquitoes on the Everglades. Like, it was just
if I ever want to raise a family, this place is way too crazy.
Yeah, and I thought for sure it was going to be Fort Myers, but let me just check out Tampa, and on the way through, found Sarasota, and it was like, I've never even heard of this place. But, yeah, of course, now everyone's heard of it. So
it's awesome. So, you parlayed your success into more success and a lot of things for the Sarasota community. Let's talk about that a little bit. You know, what you're up to now, or what what your goal or path was after that first exit, and kind of like why you're even still going. You know, because a lot of people, have an exit like that even at an earlier age, and maybe tend to slow down or do some other things, and very few people can do it again and again. And you've done it, so.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things I don't try to force. I thought I was done in 2010, and I took, I was like, I'm retired, that's it. And, 3 months later, a buddy of mine's like, I got an idea for business, Dealers United. Let's, talk about how this might work. And I said, well, I'll give you some advice, but I'm not interested in getting back into it. And then you start talking, and you're like, wow, this is just so easy, This is just, flip a couple switches and you're right back in business, and sure, let's just do it. So we did it, and that company's still thriving to this day. But what happened during that process is, my thesis was invest in Sarasota. Let's just, improve some of these buildings and really kind of commercial minded. And then going through that process of starting Dealers United, probably had, 30-some-ish employees working downtown. I'm like, you guys are driving 40 minutes into work. Like, why don't you live downtown? This place is great. There's bars, there's restaurants, there's, lots of things to walk around and see and do. And they're like, Jesse, we can't afford to live downtown. Have you looked at trying to live downtown as a renter? And so I was like, I'll show you. And I got online, and it's like, there's no place to live downtown. So that then shifted my mindset to apartments. Like, how do we create apartments in downtown so people can live here? And you realize that the rules were set up so poorly. The density is 50 units per acre. So if an acre is 44,000 square feet, you can build 10 stories. So 440,000 square feet divided by 50 people is 9,000 some square feet per person. So if you're going to build that out, it doesn't make any sense to build apartments, because no one's going to rent an apartment. You take out common areas and parking and everything, you're still renting 5,000 square foot apartments. Like, you have to create a density that makes a sense for someone to build apartments that are, 800 square feet to 1,500 square feet or whatever.
And that's obviously changed since then, right?
Well, it hasn't. So that's what's crazy is it's changed in Rosemary. They're at I believe 100 units an acre, and I used to know these numbers off the back of my hand because I was living it. But downtown, you can get bonus density. I think they changed that a couple years ago if you're building affordable units in it as well. And then there were some projects where you could shift density from other. But the point was, people are fighting me. They're like, we don't want to be New York City. It's like, you can still keep 50 units an acre as Sarasota, but individual projects should be able to increase their density. You're never going to build on top of City Hall. You're never going to build, this location or that location. But individual units themselves or buildings themselves should be able to put smaller apartments in there and make it make sense for a developer to build those, so that then people can afford to live in downtown. And even people were complaining. I had to do a traffic study when I built the Bold apartments, and I was like, this is crazy. These people that are looking to rent here don't want to drive anywhere. They want to walk around town, and it turned out it was going to be a negative impact on traffic, and you still have to pay someone to do a traffic study. It was a positive impact in terms of, it's positive overall, but it was less cars on the road because people are going to live, work, and play right in downtown.
Hey, we're having a blast here, getting to know Jesse, learning a ton. If you want to learn a little bit more about Jesse, stay tuned for rapid fire questions fueled by food and beer.
Hey, Jesse Biter, entrepreneur and investor in Sarasota, and this is Rapid Fire.
10 random questions, 10 specific answers, nothing off limits. This is Rapid Fire, fueled by food and beer. What's your favorite TV show?
I would say my favorite TV show has to be Jeopardy.
This is Jeopardy!
What's your favorite professional sports team?
My favorite professional team has to be the Bucks.
You're obviously really successful, but where was your first job?
First job, first paycheck I ever received was working at a pizza restaurant, busting tables and washing dishes.
What's your favorite quote from a movie or television show?
I would say my favorite line from a movie is Idiocracy's, "Why come you have no tattoo?"
Where's your tattoo? Why come you don't have a tattoo?
You can listen to one band or musical artist for the rest of your life. Who is it?
If I could only listen to one band the rest of my life, it would be Billy Joel.
What's your craziest impulse buy? Mine was a restaurant.
My craziest impulse buy was one day I bought a helicopter after considering it for half a day.
Pick your poison, skydive or swim with the sharks.
If I have to do one, I would skydive.
Who's the go-to goats? Tom Brady or Michael Jordan?
The GOAT of all goats would be Michael Jordan.
If you're stranded on a deserted island, would you rather be with your worst enemy or just be by yourself?
If I was trapped on an island, I think I'd rather be with my worst enemy because I'd find a way to make up and have a good time.
After, of course, eating food and beer, where's the first place you would take visitors in Sarasota besides the beach?
I think a first-time visitor to Sarasota absolutely has to ride the Breeze. It's a free trolley from downtown to St. Armand's and get to see it all, hop on and hop off. It's a great time.
So it's crazy you're talking about that because I honestly selfishly started my office downtown because I wanted to be downtown. I live east of the interstate, but it's not a long commute. But I was just talking about it with my director of operations. We should build like a little heat map of where we have our agents because it's amazing. A lot of these guys commute from Northport, Venice, Bradenton, all over, anywhere but around here. Mm. And so I'm realizing downtown may not be the most beneficial place for us. Let's look at other areas or whatnot, but I would much rather there be affordable housing and people want to move to this area because I love it downtown.
Absolutely.
So, it's cool that you're doing that, or you've spent some time doing that. What else have you done since you had that first exit? Like, is it been mainly commercial real estate, or it
started with commercial real estate. Dealers United started right up after, call it a year later, we launched Dealers United, my partner and I. So we got that going, but at the same time, I was probably spending as much time on real estate. I wanted to deploy capital. When you have a bunch of cash and you're spending it, it's just gone. Mm-hmm. But if you have a bunch of cash and you invest it into something that's going to pay you a return, then your capital is protected, and now you have cash flow.
Right.
And you hear Mr. Wonderful talk about it all the time. It's not cash, it's cash flow, and that's it. Like, you want to make your cash work for you. So that was a full-time job, just going out and like, where do I put money so that it's working for me? So that took a lot of effort, a lot of thought. Have to give a shout out to Steve Horn at Ian Black. He busted his tail. He's like, you got money to spend, I'm going to help you spend it. And he gave me some great advice, and we bought some great buildings together and, owned everything under that Palm Avenue parking garage, bought the old Century Bank building, which is now Bold, where we host our co-work facility, and the Bold apartments. Got all the properties, a lot of properties on Main Street, bars and restaurants. And so those were thriving, and then COVID hit, and I'm like, great, I'm broke now. And then cash flow, cash flow's gone. And then we have another shout out to our governor, who did a fantastic job during COVID and opened Florida right back up. And of course, everyone moved here, so it was great to be a Floridian and see, especially as a Florida property owner, to see the benefit we got there. So that helped out a lot. But then, as far as business goes, I had not wanted to work. So Dealers United, we hired a CEO after the first year, and took a couple years off. And my buddies and I were hiking Kilimanjaro, and Evan Berlin and Jamie Ebling, they own Berlin Patent Law Firm. And
Evan Berlin, Middlebury graduate. Shout out.
That's right, Middlebury. The both of them were like, we've got this little side company called Professional Lean Search, and we're kind of just stagnant. But if you want to come in and help grow the business by 30%, we'll give you 30%. We'll have an excuse to have meetings and go do things.
On Kilimanjaro.
I'm like, great, I'm not doing anything. So I jumped back into that, and they gave me a year to do it. And within about 6 weeks, the company had doubled in size, and by 6 months later, we'd hired another CEO, and that company went from 6 employees to about 40 in the first year, and then we grew it all the way up to about 500 and some employees. We still own that today.
That's a great deal for them too, though.
Oh yeah, well, it's great.
30% is.
Yeah, I mean, it was their idea, and it was the business they knew, and they gave great advice along the way. They obviously were doing their thing, but they know the industry and brought me right up to speed. And it was, I brought the technology in, which is my expertise, and we were off to the races. So.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about what you've done, right, which is awesome. But, you kind of just alluded to a little bit, maybe technology, but like how did you do it, right? Is there some sort of, is it the lesson that the guy gave you a long time ago about recurring revenue? Is it, the technology? Is there in other words, is there a kind of a theory that you hold to or a belief system that you have about business that's kind of help you win in that space?
I don't know. For me, it's just, if you see an opportunity, like I'm just relentless to go after it. I'm starting another company right now, same situation. I haven't worked in the last 2 years. I've got a buddy of mine brought me in March, brought me a friend of his who was in the outdoor power equipment, like lawnmowers and lawn equipment you see outside. And there's 19,000 of those dealers in the country. He's like, this is a problem inside our industry we need to solve. And I didn't want to go back to work. I'm really enjoying golf. And he's like, for 3 months, they're texting me, hounding me, like, come on, we got to do this. And they had already spent some money and kind of had to start and fail. So they know what the problem is, but they just couldn't get the tech in place. And the problem in today's world, you hire a person who says they're a programmer, you just don't know what you're going to get. And they can snow you for months or a year, and you have nothing to show for it. And that's unfortunately what happened to them. And so we started this company 3 weeks ago now, hired a developer, and even this developer I'm working with, he's great, but you get in there and I'm like, this time it's all new technology. Like I have to learn this stuff. So I'm in there with him, and he's teaching me so many things that have changed with developing code, which is pretty exciting. But at the same time, I'm up till 2, 3 in the morning going on YouTube videos, figuring stuff out for myself, because I know what it needs to do. I just got to figure out how to do it. And some people think they can't learn that. Maybe they can't. There's things I can't. If we're trying to, solve for cancer, you give me a microscope, I'm not going to know what to do with it. But, you give me something for enough time, I'm going to, not sleep, and I'll figure it out. And that's kind of where I'm at.
So it's technology then, sounds like.
For me, it's tech.
I didn't realize you were hands-on with the technology. I knew vaguely kind of your story, but you were in there with the code early on.
Yeah.
Yourself.
Yeah. I wrote our first version.
That's pretty amazing.
And what's funny is when developers take what I have and move on with it, without fail, they're like, this is horrible. How does this even work? And it's like, well, it works. And it took me a couple weeks to do. Like, you're going to go back and think about it for 6 months and then program it for 6 months. And then by the time you're done, it's not even doing what it needs to do anymore because the market's changed. Like, if I showed you first version, speed wins, right? It's just, it might not be pretty, but it's going to get the job done. And that's where I'm at right now. You should, I'll show you what I'm building. It's not pretty.
I feel like every time we have a development team on our CRM, and kind of, again, rudimentary. Our CRM is custom and pretty rudimentary. Got the job done, but the dashboard metrics, all that stuff is, was kind of whack for a long time. And so we've got a development team taking it to that next level. And every time we give them a deadline for firing them and getting a new development team in there, they get a lot of shit done real fast. Yeah. It's amazing. But I think I don't know what that is all about, but I feel like they have multiple projects they're working on or something, and they're dedicating their time to one before they switch over.
I think he explained
another.
it. I mean, when you're hiring somebody to do something like that they know you don't understand, they're going to stretch out that payday.
They're on a retainer.
Whereas when you're the owner and you're also doing the code, your interests are aligned.
Yeah,
So
and you're writing
solving
that
the problem
check.
as soon as possible.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you're writing that check every week too to pay them. To them, it's it's a different story. I do my best to align everyone in the company. It's like, hey, the better the company does, the better you do. But some people just don't get that. They coast, and that's just the way it is. And the other problem with tech folks is, every time a new one comes in, it's like, oh, everything you had is trash. We got to redo it. We got to start from scratch. We got to,
Sounds like my accountant.
Yeah. And that's a lot of work. Yeah. So, a lot of professions, they come in and think you got to redo something.
Yeah, it would be fair to say, so your success is like, in your story, are like you were early into tech and you were relentless, getting it done and building these companies. But then you were also early on another thing, and that's what part of the reason we're here. You were early on Sarasota.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? You want to
absolutely.
You want to talk more about how you feel about the Sarasota business climate and kind of what you see coming down going forward.
Sure.
Just because we're tight on time and
absolutely.
I want to make sure.
About 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
All right.
I was shocked when I came through Sarasota. So I'm like, this place is beautiful and affordable, and that might not be what people think anymore, but compared to what I was seeing across the other parts of the state, it was definitely still, I could live near the water, not on the water, but I didn't have to live out in the Everglades. Pretty much,
next to
other than Naples, the west coast of Florida is still that way, compared to the east coast.
Right.
And it had one of everything, we had an airport, we had a main street,
wasn't much of an airport.
Wasn't much of an airport. Now I'm on the airport board now. I'm seeing what's happening there is crazy. But it's just really wonderful to see, that it hasn't lost its what it always was. It was still arts and culture and everything else, but people have come to appreciate it. And you're always going to have people complain that, we've paved downtown and now it's all buildings and we've blocked the waterfront and all that sort of stuff. But the reality is it's a beautiful downtown. Downtowns are downtowns.
Yeah.
And, if you don't want to be in a downtown, there's places around Sarasota you don't have to be. But I love this place.
Let's shift gears a little bit to politics. You host some high-named politicians at your house for fundraisers, correct? You want to name drop a few of them?
I've had a lot of people there. So I'm also been fortunate to pick people early on. Rick Scott, when he was polling at 1%. I love the idea that he was a successful business person that was going to come in and run the state like a business. And so I supported him, and everyone told me I was crazy, and lo and behold, he became our governor, and I had a great relationship with him during that time. Rick Santorum was another one. He came to speak in Sarasota, and he was polling at 0, but I was like, I just love what he has to say. I've listened to everybody, and he ended up being the last guy before Romney. We had Marco Rubio here. He was kind of a shoo-in, but I loved his energy, and so I had him at the house a few times. DeSantis was another one. I couldn't get 30 people to show up at my house probably 5 different times for free just to meet him. Those were friend raisers, and literally couldn't get 30 people to come to the house because it was Adam Putnam at the time. Adam was the shoo-in. He was 99%. And then Trump put his arm around DeSantis, and next day DeSantis is leading the pack. And so it was just, I knew Adam and thought he was a great guy, but I just felt like I'm not a huge fan of career politicians. I like people that have been out, and especially as someone that's signed the front of a paycheck before and has, been part of, the real world, and then to come in and give back to politics is always kind of what I'm looking for in a politician.
Hell yeah.
Sounds like you're paving the way for your own political.
Never. I've been asked multiple times.
I agree. I like that too, and I need to have somebody to back here one day. So
you can go to Brad's house. We have a friends raiser. See how much money you walk out with.
Vern Buchanan's been a friend since 2006 when I helped him when he first ran, and that's how I met Vern and the whole family. And just again, a person who could spend the rest of his life cruising around, but instead, not only gives all his time to this, but doesn't even take a paycheck. To me, that's and I can't do that. That's better than me, because that is
that's where I draw the line.
Yeah, I don't want the rest of the world out critiquing everything I do, and
scrutiny seems like it might be a little much.
Yeah, it's just it's like these are folks that don't have to do this, that choose to do it, and I appreciate that.
We'll just keep picking winners to do it for you, right?
That's it. I'd rather be the kingmaker than the king.
We're going to get Vern on here soon, so we'll send him the clip.
Vern's agreed to do it.
He's a soft commit.
We're in touch with him. No,
soft commit.
He's a hard commit.
Hard commit.
Vern's great, and he should be admired for the life he's given up to do what he does.
All right, I'm cutting in right now. Terminator Law and I both want to know, what are your thoughts on roundabouts in Sarasota? Do you love them or do you hate them?
I love them.
Why?
Yeah, so I even started SRQ Circle on
SRQ Circle
on Instagram.
Wow.
On Instagram, so you can go follow that and see all the accidents that happen right in front of my house. But
I never even knew the name was SRQ Circle. I watched the videos all the time, never paid attention to the name.
Yeah, well, and but I love them because I'd rather drive slow than sit there to have a bulb tell me not to go when I know it's safe. So I am a big fan of the Circle. I think it helps traffic flow. I know people hate them, but I just feel like they're more efficient.
I think we've all become pro roundabouts.
You'd be surprised. I think 50 is this episode 55? 55 or 56. So we've had 55 or 56 answers. So we've asked it on every single one, starting with Eric Arroyo, who educated us on them a little bit. But I bet you if we went back through and took a simple yes or no, do they love it or do they hate it, I bet you it's kind of split down the middle.
Yeah.
And I like what you said. Roundabouts over bulbs.
Yeah.
This is good.
I will personally admit that I hated roundabouts and had a lot to say about them, and we've had so many people share their opinions that my opinion has shifted to, you know what, you're right. I'd rather be moving and maybe dealing with somebody who doesn't know how to, use it that great every once in a while than having to be at a stoplight.
I mean, the hurricane argument is the winner, period. I mean, roundabouts work during hurricanes, lights don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of accidents happen during hurricanes, and it's pretty bad.
All right, one last question for Jesse before we have to get out of here. Who wants it?
That's always Felipe, buddy.
Oh, so usually we always ask our guests, like, who else do you think Sarasota needs to know? Who should we ask to be on our show? Who do you think would be a good fit for what we do here? And who should we introduce to Sarasota?
I feel like
I have some ideas based on people I know but...
Yeah, well, I would have to see who's been on here before. But I've got a couple business partners that, are great. I'm trying to think more who's doing more public Sarasota, in the eye of Sarasota's public.
We like to get the ones that are not so public too, though.
Yeah. Have you had Matt Buchanan on yet? Vern's son?
We've not, but I think we can make that happen. If Vern's willing to, Matt should be willing to, right? We did have
We had the guy, the manager.
The general manager for the restaurant there.
What's the name of the restaurant, babe?
Le Mans.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
which was cool.
Right.
Yep.
But yeah, that would be a good one, Matt Buchanan.
Do you think you could get a line on Nick Walenda? I mean, he's somebody who we would love to have on here.
Well,
there's
Nick's my new business partner.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's what I was telling my friend.
No kidding.
That was Nick Walenda.
Because, my thought was from the time when he walked the wire.
Yeah.
I was at that party.
At my house?
That one time he walked the wire? Which
Oh, yeah. No, he walked into my condo downtown.
Oh, that's great.
It's pretty fun.
That's when we first met, and while he was setting all that up. And it was funny, too, because that morning I was going to film him with a drone, and that was back when he had to fly drones with an iPad. And so I went and tested it and almost killed an ABC guy and then destroyed my drone against the side of the condo building. So I'm like, you know what?
landed in the roundabout.
Yeah. I just get
right by his head.
Yeah. Because you're trying to fly this thing on a windy day with an iPad. I'm like, this is horrible.
I'm glad. I didn't think you'd mind I brought that up, but that's somebody I think everybody in Sarasota would love to see on kind of a personal level.
Nick would do this
for
sure.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Well, Jesse, we really appreciate you coming on, and we know we had a little bit of a time crunch, but I think we covered the majority of it. And again, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me.
Thanks for coming, buddy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.